I feel like there are three options potentially, and there's a good chance none of them happen. They could trade up and get after it and try to get Kyler Murray. I think that's extremely unlikely, right? Because I think he's probably going to go 1-1. They could trade up and try to get Haskins, which maybe is slightly more likely, but I don't think it's overwhelmingly likely. Or probably the best case scenario for them is still to try to engineer a trade for Josh Rosen. It would be less costly. You would potentially have your quarterback of the future at a discount. You don't even have to pay that high sort of initial signing bonus and some of that stuff, right?
Right.
You'd have him under team control for 3 to 4 years. He's got a year under his belt. Not a great year, but still a year under his belt. Maybe with some good tutoring with O'Connell and Gruden and these guys. He could really blossom in his second year like Trubisky did, like Jared Goff did. That ultimately might be the best option for them still. Even though in a perfect world, in a vacuum, if cost wasn't an issue, I'd like to have Kyler Murray 1, probably Haskins 2, Rosen 3.
I think the Rosen
option... But in terms
option,
of what the cost is, Rosen's probably the best option.
I think the Rosen option is very good. Like I said,
no one's talking about that
scouting
anymore. Why is no one talking about it?
Because it's probably gonna go down right around the draft.
But why is nobody still? Why are we still
just a back burner issue right now?
Beating the drum. Is it the NCAA tournament just sort of surpassed it, and so that's why it's quieted
maybe
down?
That's part of it.
Did we get lost in the Bryce Harper sweepstakes?
I think people get fired up
during
the combine.
I don't know.
Right?
Why are we stopped talking about Josh Rosen?
Right around the combine and the beginning of free agency, and then it dies down for a while until the draft starts coming up.
But
I think that's really what happens.
That there's not as much buzz around Rosen is because he had a bad rookie year, and it's not all on him. I mean, he had a terrible offensive line in front of him. He had just woeful coaching from Mike McCoy and company in Arizona. So maybe he just maybe he needs that change of scenery and somebody new to kind of groom him. I think maybe that's why some of the bloom is off of his rose.
The curveball could be, what if Arizona actually likes him? What if the head coach actually likes Josh Rosen and all this Kyler Murray stuff is smokescreen, and they want somebody to move up to 1, saying they love Kyler Murray, and then they trade down and they go with Josh Rosen and they draft somebody else.
It's possible. It's possible. It seems unlikely, but it's possible for sure. Again, in a perfect world,
I mean, it is a risky play. Kyler Murray may be a stud, but
it's risky.
There is definitely bust potential.
Risky for sure. But if in a perfect world, if cost wasn't an issue, I would want Kyler Murray 1, Haskins 2, and I don't even really. I'm not even really interested in the other guys.
I just always felt like when everybody assigned what Kingsbury said about Kyler Murray, like he was the greatest quarterback he's ever seen and that sort of thing, he was playing him. It was an opposing quarterback.
It's true.
As a head coach, you always hype up your opponents. Like that.
I think if the interest wasn't real, it wouldn't have this shelf life. It wouldn't have lasted this long. It's almost considered a given that they're going to make this move. You know what's fascinating? Drabby was telling me this the other day.
So which department do you go for?
Of the three, the most practical would be Rosen.
I know, but you want the big splash to Kyler Murray still.
Well, no, I would want to do what's practical. In a vacuum, if cost wasn't an issue, I would rather roll the dice with Murray. But in terms of practicality, I think Kyler Murray has the chance to be the biggest star. But in terms of practicality, cost, what's likely, what's doable, I would go for Rosen.
And you still should have your first-round pick. Because people are saying that he's not going to give up the first-round pick.
Even if I had to give up my 50th, I would give up the 15th for a shot at having my guy for maybe 4 to 8 years, right?
If you believe he's better than
I wouldn't be crazy about trading that
He's
first
a
pick.
first-round pick last year.
Yeah, but his value's been dinged a bit by that first year in Arizona. Again, it's not all on him. He had a lot of bad circumstances.
Go back to our interview with Orlovsky and how much he was jocking him.
He loved him. Yeah. He said he'd be willing to give up the 15.
Is that what he said too?
I think, or was that somebody else that we had?
No, it was Orlovsky.
Yeah.
Drabby, tell people what you said, which I thought was fascinating. So Drab and the guys from the Big O and Dukes podcast were up in Arizona, and they did a big show. Mm-hmm. Very cool. Like, when was the last time you guys were on in Arizona live?
2007.
Yeah. So it's like 11, 12 years, and they still sell out a show out there. It's pretty cool. So they were out there, and he said Tell them what you said about the excitement level is for Josh Rosen and the Kyler Murray.
So there were a lot of Cardinal fans at the appearances and people we met. There wasn't one Kyler Murray fan in Arizona that I found.
Really?
They love Josh Rosen. Now, fans are already invested into the team a little bit, so they want to see what they already spent money on work out, but they all wanted Nick Bosa, and they would be distraught if they picked Kyler Murray.
Isn't that crazy?
So the public sentiment in Arizona is not pro Kyler Murray.
And you would
at this
think with
point.
Rosen kind of pooping the bed that there'd be something, the bloom would be off the rose. They'd be like, yeah, next.
Well,
They're still
I think
all
they just
in.
realized that the Wilkes hiring was a disaster. They had to just clean house with them.
Why was that
and move
such
on.
a disaster? Because typically you'd say, giving a guy 1 year, not fair. Definitely not fair. But no one seems to really be raising that flag. Why was it a disaster?
Well, I think a complete lack of talent on their offensive line, and McCoy did the same thing, I think, every single week. It was the most predictable thing ever.